Good evening, friends. Welcome to the India Power Talk. As you know, India Power Talk is an initiative wherein we invite international thought leaders and domain experts to create an easily accessible digital reservoir of their insights, experiences, and strategies on the economy. This is meant to benefit not just Indian entrepreneurs and policymakers, but also international businesses, investors, and strategic partners who have invested in or intend to invest in India. We have been inviting entrepreneurs, economists, professors, investment bankers, inventors, scientists, lawyers, chartered accountants, and other senior professionals with experience in diverse sectors who could contribute on the subject. Before 1990, the country that was about 1% of global manufacturing value added today accounts for nearly 30%. A majority of global brands carry the Made in China labels and stamp. There are multiple reasons and enough statistics available that explains why China is the world's factory. China is unquestionably a manufacturing powerhouse. The two most debated questions the COVID-19 pandemic has raised are: who will win the race for making the successful vaccine, and which country will be the next manufacturing hub? For today's discussion, I'm going to focus on what made China the global manufacturing hub and what needs to be done by India to reach a competitive level in manufacturing. Most importantly, should India compete or collaborate? And to talk on this, we have today someone who has lived and taught in China for 13 long years. Let me welcome highly experienced and most distinguished Professor S. Ramakrishnan Velamuri from the China-Europe International Business School, CEIBS. You have spent 13 long years in China. May I request you to share China that you saw and experienced?
I have been an expat now for about 37 years in total. And I've lived for about close to 25 years in Western Europe, about 4 years in the US where I did my PhD. And as you mentioned, the last 13 years in China. China and Shanghai in particular. Shanghai is, probably one of the most modern cities in China. It combines the infrastructure of a developed country, and it offers some conveniences that are only available in an emerging economy. I have been very lucky to work for a very successful business school. We completed 25 years in 2019, and it's very rare for any academic institution to be ranked number 5 in the world after just 25 years. So to answer your question, the 13 years that we've had in China have been really wonderful.
Great. Do you have Indian students there?
Yes. So in our full-time MBA program, we admit between 10 and 15 Indian students. Because we are so highly ranked, I think we attract a large number of applications from India. And we get applications from the top institutions.
Now let's get to business straight. Forget the commentaries, statistics, data, and all technical explanations. Could you tell us your insights on China? What made them to rise so fast? The true ground reality. I mean, the truth of the matter.
The truth of the matter, I think, is very well known and simple. I think they started a program in the 80s, what's broadly referred to as the reform and opening up.
But would you attribute the success only to the infrastructure and the low-cost labor there?
China, in my view, had 4 important advantages with respect to India. Okay, The first was that they had a more educated workforce. The second big advantage that China had was that they had a healthier population.
I see.
The third advantage was that they were a more equal population in terms of gender equality. And the fourth advantage they had with respect to India, I think, is that China has very low levels of social stratification. In China, there is a belief amongst the people that if you educate yourself and if you work hard, you can progress upwards on the socioeconomic ladder.
Could you, slightly elaborate on the education policy over there or education system over there as compared to India?
So basically, in China, even during Chairman Mao's time, right, he unified the country in terms of a single language, which is Mandarin Chinese. So everybody in China speaks Mandarin Chinese, although there are many, many local dialects. Everybody speaks Mandarin Chinese. And he made sure that everybody could read and write. And in China, in order to be considered literate, you need to be able to read about 1,500 Chinese characters.
I see.
Okay, so the standard for being considered literate in China is actually quite high. They place a very great importance on education. So their school education system is very, very rigorous. They have made huge investments in upgrading their universities, the public universities.
People have not spoken too much about the technological development of China. The speed of adoption in technologies in China has caught the world by surprise. From superpowers like Alibaba and Tencent to artificial intelligence and the development of 5G technology, it seems China is becoming known as the innovation powerhouse now. How has China been able to achieve this? I mean, the progress in the technological field?
Both countries have leapfrogged some generations of technology. So for example, both China and India have pretty much leapfrogged the fixed line telephone technologies, right? So we moved almost directly to mobile. So because China did not have a strong technological history and their youngsters were very educated, they eagerly adopted technology. The 80s coincided with the PC revolution.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 90s coincided with the mobile revolution. From 2000 to 2010, you can say broadly speaking, it was especially the second half, was the smartphone revolution. And from 2010 to 2020, it has been a convergence of digital technologies. So China has very optimally adopted all the technologies that we spoke about. So so if one reason for the success of China, of course, is its economic policies, but they have been very, very proactive in adopting science and technology. Okay, in fact, Deng Xiaoping, the paramount leader of China after Mao Zedong passed away, he spoke about the 4 modernizations of China. And one of the modernizations was modernization in science and technology, right? So that's a very, very important building block. The second reason for you mentioned the creation of giants, technological giants such as Alibaba or Tencent or Meituan. China has created its own technological ecosystem in some sense, right? Which you don't see, for example, in India. Okay, so in China, the market leader for search is a Chinese company called Baidu. The market leader in social media
is parallel to Google.
Yes, which is parallel to Google. In China, the social media giant is Tencent, which is a combination of Facebook and WhatsApp. With the WeChat super app, they combine WhatsApp, Facebook, and PayPal or other payment apps, right? Then you have e-commerce giants such as Alibaba with Taobao, which is more of a C2C platform, Tmall, which is a B2C platform, and then you have another very big giant which is called JD.com, which follows more or less the Amazon model. So they have homegrown giants in each vertical. So these companies have been able to grow to a very, very big size without really stepping out of China. So if you look at the operational footprint of Alibaba or Tencent or JD.com or even Meituan, you'll find that they're very strong in China, but they're not really strong outside China. The only pure technology company, and I'm not including the hardware companies here, I'll leave out the hardware companies, I'll talk about them later. But if you look at the pure tech company, the only tech company from China that has been able to create a global footprint is ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok. But the rest of the Chinese technology giants have really found it difficult to grow organically outside China. And that may have to do with the fact that they are functioning within a very, very, let's say, unique technological ecosystem that's not integrated with the technology ecosystem of the rest of the world. Okay, India has, you could say, one way of putting it is to say that India has adopted a different policy. I think the reality is probably that India did not really have a policy, technology policy. We just drifted into the situation where we are today. So we have all the multinational giants positioned in these big technology verticals, right? So you have Google, you have Facebook, you have Walmart and Amazon. E-commerce. One advantage that I think Indian tech companies have is that they are better integrated with the global technology ecosystem. And let's not forget that, whether it's Google or whether it's Facebook or whether it's, Amazon or whether it's Walmart, all these companies have very, very sizable back-end operations in India. So these companies actually have a very, very strong India presence. So I would say that the second reason why China has been successful is that they've been able to create an ecosystem within the country, and that combined with the market size has allowed their companies to grow. I don't want to suggest that the market is not competitive, that the government has not protected these companies in any way, because competition in China is brutal. It's just that Baidu has not faced real competition from Google. Tencent has not faced real competition from Facebook and so on, right?
But why is that?
Because it's not easy. Facebook has not been allowed to operate in China.
I see. So that's the protection which the government offers to logistic companies.
But it's different in different verticals, right? So Google was operating in China when I was there, when I first went to China in 2007. But then the Chinese government requires technology companies to have their servers inside the country.
I see.
And Google was not willing to comply, and so they left the country. And Amazon actually, as far as Amazon was concerned, or eBay was concerned, there were actually no barriers for them to operate in China. I think they were just outwitted by more nimble local competitors. eBay was outwitted by Alibaba completely, right? And the same is true of Amazon. Amazon tried very hard to break into the Chinese market, but they were not successful. So
one question I would like to ask here is how much, you say the government was very proactive in protecting and also supporting the local companies. What is the role of, or how much has the government invested in technology compared to India?
After the global financial crisis, most developed countries cut back on R&D. Okay, whereas between 2008 and 2016, China almost tripled its R&D expenditures. So there is a measure which is called gross expenditures and research and development, which includes both public expenditures and private expenditures.
I see, both ways.
Yeah, so China actually almost tripled, right? It's GERD in those 8 years. India increased its expenditures by about 20% over those 8 years, but China tripled its expenditures, right? And so this is where, in the last 12 years, is where China has really caught up with the rest of the world in cutting edge areas such as artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, blockchain, etc.
I'm still keen to know, Professor Rama, from you as to how much is the government spent on innovation. Whether it is education, judiciary, or their other departments, whatever public sector departments, infrastructure department, how would you compare Chinese government investment in the society or in the technology?
China's expenditures on R&D currently are about $600 billion. $600 billion.
The government expenditure.
No, total public and private. Okay, $600 billion, which is roughly 2.2% of their GDP.
I see.
Okay, $600 billion is adjusted for PPP, purchasing power parity. Okay, India's expenditures are about $63 billion, about 1/10 of China's. Okay, we spend 0.6% of our GDP on R&D. China spends 2.2%. Okay. Now, given the fact that we spend so little, it's actually quite surprising that we are ranked 48th in the world. because that's not a bad rank if you think about it, right? And
Yeah.
we are probably the highest ranked country in the lower middle income category, right? In the lower middle income category, probably, or one of the highest ranked, right? I think maybe Vietnam and Ukraine may be higher ranked than us, but we are one of the highest ranked countries in the lower middle income category in the Global Innovation Index rankings, in spite of actually spending a very, very small amount on R&D.
Professor Rama, why do you think India's manufacturing output is so small relative, to the size of the Indian economy,
Right.
and in compared to the service sector that India offers?
So just to share with you some data points, I mean, our population is about 18% of the global population, 1/8. Our GDP is about 7.75% of the global GDP. Our manufacturing output is about 3% of the global manufacturing output. So really, our manufacturing sector is very small relative to the size of the economy. I think there are multiple reasons for this. I think one reason is that at a very basic level, it's still very hard to do business in India. I have to give credit to the recent governments for having improved India's ranking in the ease of doing business of the World Bank. But on the ground, it's still not easy to do business in India, especially in the manufacturing sector. Okay, and I think the central government, I think, is generally very progressive when it comes to the manufacturing sector and the policies. But ultimately, it is the state governments that actually step in and interact with manufacturing industries on a regular basis. And I hear still, unfortunately, from many parts of the country, complaints about harassment, extortion, and so on and so forth. And just the complexity of the laws is still very great. One of the biggest problems in India continues to be land acquisition. I think availability of land is still not a smooth process, in spite of the good intentions of both the central government and the state government. It's not a smooth process yet. Power availability has been a problem, although it's been improving in the last few years. Our labor can be much more difficult to manage, than, for example, the labor in China.
Large part of Indian economy comprises of SME, MSMEs, and the startups of the world. We have the largest pool, I guess. They contribute not only in terms of the manufacturing output, but also in terms of generating large amount of employment for the country. What would your advice be to them? Or how would you compare the SME of China versus the SMEs of India?
There is a very strong aspiration for growth in China, and with many Chinese entrepreneurs, I found that appetite is almost insatiable. They want to keep growing.
I see.
And the dream of every Chinese entrepreneur has been, until now, at least, to list his or her company in the US. On New York Stock Exchange or on NASDAQ, right? I find that in India, many business people, even successful business people, once they reach 300, 400 crores or 3-4 billion rupees in revenues, they say, that's good enough, and they shift their attention maybe to more community service or more spiritual pursuits, right? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just sharing this as a
No, you are absolutely right. Your observation is absolutely bang on point.
Yes. And so I think that growth, appetite, hunger, I see less of it in India. That's my first observation. The second thing I would say, and this is advice that I give to SMEs all over the world, and that is that if you want to grow and if you want to crack the growth ceiling, you need to do two things essentially, right? You need to first build a strong management team, right? With a strong management team, you will be able to delegate the day-to-day running of the business to your team members, And that will allow you to focus on the more medium to long-term strategic issues. Okay. And many founders of companies, even companies that have been successful, fall into the trap of not building management teams. The second thing, which goes hand in hand with the first point I just made, is to rely more on systems and processes, right? Rather than ad hoc decision making, right? So you need systems to evaluate people. You know, you need systems to measure the performance of your employees, of your team members. You need systems to determine who has outperformed and who has not. And very often, SME founders, they associate delegation with loss of control that somehow constrains their growth.
So last year, Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President met at the Mamlapuram in Chennai, when many of the foreign policy experts said that both these nations should collaborate and not compete. I mean, what's your take on this, Professor Rama? Should we compete or should we?
I totally agree that we should collaborate, right? I think both countries are very fortunate to be neighbors. You know, when you have two neighbors that are so large, of course, China currently is about 5 times as big as India in terms of nominal GDP, about 2.5 times the size of India in terms of PPP, adjusted GDP. But when you have two large economies as neighbors, you know, there are many studies that show that neighbors trade more with each other than countries that are geographically distant from each other, right? But neighbors also have more conflicts with each other. That's also, there's also empirical evidence to support that. So as long as we can manage our differences, you know, there is great potential in both countries collaborating. I believe that the potential is for both countries to achieve about $500 to $600 billion in bilateral trade in the next 5 to 6 years. And I've actually written in the Chinese media saying that it's a problem for India and for China that the most competitive manufacturing sector in India, which is the pharmaceutical sector, has not enjoyed market access. Right? The Chinese will respond and say that if there are any barriers to the pharmaceutical industry, they are not India specific. And they're right in saying that. You know, they're absolutely right in saying that. But I think the Chinese side should probably work a little harder to make it possible for India to sell its pharmaceutical products in China, which will be very good for the bilateral trade of both countries, and also very good for the Chinese citizens who are craving for affordable medicine. Another area of collaboration, I think, is in IT services. India has, so China is a world leader in consumer tech. I think they are lagging significantly behind the United States when it comes to enterprise tech.
Oh, I see.
And this is where India can make a great contribution to China. In infrastructure, the Chinese can help India a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, both in terms of quality of infrastructure and cost, right? Whether it's railways, whether it's tunnels, whether it's roads, whether it's highways. And in the manufacturing sector in general, they've got so much experience. And one of the things that's happening in China is that the costs are going up. You know, in coastal China today, labor is more expensive than in Malaysia, for example, right? So many Chinese companies, if we can create a hospitable environment for them to manufacture in India, they would love to come to India and produce in India, you know, and then export from India to the markets. So I think great potential for collaboration, but I think we need to strengthen the trust between the two countries.
What would be your message to to India?
To India, I would say, you know, I think, you know, we should engage with China. I think it's very, very important because, you know, we can't change geography, you know, and we have a 3,500 kilometer border that we share with China. And so decoupling with China is not an option for India. And I think if we want to build an Asian century, the two countries will have to learn to work with each other. And on the ground, if you see, when I bring Chinese participants to India, they connect to India in very, very deep ways. They're very impressed by what they see in India. Similarly, when Indians go to China, that in Shanghai, there are several thousand Indian professionals working in China. They're so happy working there, right? And we all feel very appreciated by the Chinese people, by the way, So I think on a people-to-people level, there is tremendous chemistry. I just think that, I hope the leadership of the two countries can figure out a way to work with each other so that, the relationship between two countries can fully blossom.
Professor Rama, really thank you so much for your valuable time, insights, and experience. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
I would like to also thank the Indian Chamber of Commerce, the LawSICO, and the India SME Accelerator Network. Let me conclude with my vote of thanks with the humble prayer to the Almighty to bestow mankind with the right spirit to fight the coronavirus and also help restore peace, prosperity, and bliss. Thank you, Professor Rama, once again.
Thank you so much.